Welcome to the Daily Allegory through astrological divination. The magic motto of the day is what moves in silence is still counted. Today's story is about a high-profile case that erupts from a couple's mutually devastating allegations. But what first appears to be an intimate dispute soon reveals a scale so dangerous that ordinary investigative channels are no longer enough, forcing the matter into tightly controlled, compartmentalized review by elite units operating in secure environments designed to observe psychological patterns, decision-making under pressure, moral thresholds, and the difference between performance and true character when people believe nobody is watching. As the pressure points are methodically applied, the results become impossible to ignore. The man's claims about the woman were never paranoia or exaggeration, but the visible edge is something far larger, an entire criminal ecosystem hidden behind charm, manipulation, and plausible deniability, where competency, coercion, opportunism, and willingness to commit crimes all surface with chilling clarity. What began as a volatile personal matter transforms into the unraveling of a vast criminal empire, and when the final sweep comes in the form of a massive RICO raid, the whole network buckles at once, with participants rushing to confess and barter their stories in a desperate attempt to save themselves from the weight of their own involvement. Today's story is called The Quiet Index. It began as a kind of case people mistake for ordinary because it enters the world through intimacy. A man and a woman stood on opposite sides of a table and accused one another of things grave enough to stain a city. Lies, coercion, surveillance, fraud, threats, manipulation. To the public eye, it looked like another private war with legal vocabulary. Two damaged people, two incompatible stories, familiar ruin. But the first team assigned to review the matter did not come back with a recommendation. They came back with a warning. The allegations were too patterned, too interconnected, too calibrated around leverage, movement, access, and reaction. Small details repeated across interviews that should never have touched one another. Names surfaced in wrong places, addresses linked to unrelated financial anomalies, devices appeared where they shouldn't have been. What looked like mutual destruction had the outline of something far older and larger. Not a dispute, but an ecosystem. That was when the case vanished upward. Not press, no public filing that meant anything, no ordinary task force. It was absorbed into the compartment nobody named directly, handed to people whose work began only when scale and consequence exceeded conventional jurisdiction. They did not treat it like a relationship breakdown. They treated it like a live map with half of its streets still invisible. The woman was charismatic in the way certain friars are charismatic, beautiful until you realize the room has already been burning for hours. The man looked like what such cases often produce, sleep-starved, isolated, either truthful or broken enough to resemble truth. On paper, they could be mistaken for equals in conflict. In deeper review, the symmetry began to fail. The classified teams did not rely on confession first. They relied on pressure, not torture, not melodrama, precision. Controlled environments were constructed to observe their choices under stress without announcing themselves as tests. Minor deprivations, delayed gratification, access to convenience, power, plausible deniability, small moral crossroads disguised as everyday life. The question was not whether people would lie in interviews. Everybody lies in interviews. The question was what they would do when they believed themselves to be unseen, unrecorded, privately justified. That was where the truth began to surface. Competency was easy to fake in a room. Character was not. Some subjects became cooperative only when they were watched. Others became cold once anonymity was implied. A few displayed that specific breed of criminal intelligence that mistakes emotional distance for mastery. Under controlled pressure, they did not merely reveal willingness to deceive, but willingness to recruit, to sacrifice others, to externalize guilt, to commit crimes if the environment suggested invisibility. The test gauged not just reaction, but appetite. Who enjoyed coercion, who rationalized it, who escalated when they felt protected. The man's account, once filtered through these observations, stopped looking paranoid and started looking incomplete only because it had been too small. He had not described a toxic woman. He had brushed against an empire. The astrologer attached to behavioral synthesis was never listed in the official paperwork, but her reports moved quietly through the internal chains because too many correlations kept landing exactly where she said they would. She described the period as one of drowned signals and scorched identities, Mercury and Pisces, language moving like water through walls, truth arising slantwise, and hidden transmissions more influential than direct statements. Mercury trine Jupiter in the 6th suggested systems speaking through routines, intelligence surfacing in day-to-day operations, the mundane workplace turning into a cathedral of evidence. The larger sky was a little bit more violent. North Node, Mercury, and Mars stellium all in Pisces, fate braided with covert speech, deception, and submerged conflict. And we had a Neptune, Saturn, Sun, and Chiron stellium in Aries, which has been a consistent stellium. Illusion fused with force, injury becoming identity, exposure arriving through pressure. Her memo ended with one line the lead analyst underlined twice. This is not a case about accusations. It is a case about what swims beneath accusations when the water is finally lit. So they lit it. The quantum division handled the parts no one discussed in plain language. Their surveillance methods were less machine than philosophy. Probability mapping, behavioral resonance modeling, encrypted pattern analysis that treated human choice like a field rather than a sequence. Quantum investigations in their hands, basically, did not mean science fiction gadgets so much as impossible patience applied at scale. They watched correlations from across finance, travel, device tracking, message drift, emotional proximity, and timing anomalies. They built models that asked not simply where a person had been, but where intention clustered before an act occurred. A city of ghosts began to emerge. The woman sat near the center of it, though not quite atop. She was being mentored. She was a conduit, part recruiter, part shield, part bait. Through her moved favors, introductions, debts, access, sex, silence, and the social camouflage that lets organized cruelty dress itself as private drama. The man had been right about her, though, but even he had not known exactly how right he had been. The people around her were not random associates. They were a distributed architecture. Money handlers, credential borrowers, soft-faced facilitators, technical specialists, frightened loyalists, and predators elegant enough to survive in professional clothing. Cops, judges, lawyers, pillars of the community. The controlled tests expanded from here. Some participants were given opportunities to exploit anonymous power, and they took it, without second thinking. Some were offered harmless-looking administrative shortcuts that amounted to criminal consent. They accepted. Some were placed near vulnerable stand-ins and observed for empathy. They showed absolutely none. Some were subtly a target, deserved an intervention, and they escalated beyond instructions. By the third phase, the pattern could no longer be called ambiguous. Under pressure, the same moral contour repeated across the network: willingness to commit harm when the structure promised insulation, willingness to distort reality if a language was clinical enough, willingness to dehumanize anyone who threatened a machinery. Meanwhile, the man was moved through secure environments so controlled they felt almost dreamlike. Rooms with no visible corners, interview chambers designed to reduce suggestion, observation suits where his speech, pulse, gaze, and recall were measured against changing contexts. At first, he assumed he was the one being evaluated. He was, but not the way that he thought. The divisions wanted to know whether trauma had made him unreliable or whether reliability had made him dangerous to the people around him. They found something rarer. He was accurate. Not perfectly, not legally, not in every emotional detail, but structurally accurate. He had been reporting the outline of a truth too large to fit inside domestic language. He kept calling it her, because he did not yet have the vocabulary for the network. Once he understood that, he stopped trying to sound sane. He started sounding precise. That was when the case accelerated. See, quantum models were cross-fed with financial audits, sealed behavioral findings, device captures, and movement histories. Names that had once floated independently locked into place like iron filings around a hidden magnet. Shell businesses connected to service vendors connected to residences connected to temporary devices connected to clean professionals with dirty night lives. Them double lives will get you. The woman's personal orbit overlapped with too many of them to remain an accident or coincidence. Then came the choice gauge in sequence that ended everything. A set of subjects, each believing themselves protected by compartmentalization, were separately offered versions of the same scenario, a chance to preserve themselves by redirecting blame downward. The result was devastating, to say the least. Nearly all of them took it. Not only did they choose self-preservation over loyalty, they supplied corroborations, timelines, routes, methods, and names in the process. What fear had hidden, pressure disclosed. What hierarchy had preserved, consequence atomized. The analysts called it cascade failure. The old detectives called it panic. Either way, the criminal empire began confessing before the words were even finished. What had started with a couple accusing each other of unspeakable things, now widened into a lattice of financial crimes, coercion, extortion, stalking, data compromise, interstate fraud, falsified records, intimidation, and coordinated witness manipulation. Each confession was less a revelation than a surrender to the inevitability of being fully seen. The RICO package landed like weather. Not one dramatic raid, but a synchronized collapse. Doors breached at dawn, severs were mirrored, accounts got frozen, safe houses were emptied, respectable names pulled from respectable offices and respectable clothes. News outlets received only the cleanest fragment of the truth, because the whole truth would have sounded almost invented. The woman was taken last. Well, psychological torment. By then, she had lost the one thing she had always relied on: narrative control. In the holding corridor, she asked once, almost lazily, whether the man had built this case against her. The lead investigator looked at her for a long time before answering. No. Not at all, he said. He survived it long enough for us to see. It was like he was playing Chase the Dragon. That'd be a hell of a thing. That was the real terror to the story. Not that a high-profile case had uncovered a criminal empire. Not that quantum investigations had mapped the invisibility. Not even that the confessions had spread faster than loyalty. It was that the empire had hidden for years inside the costume of ordinary human conflict. A couple arguing, a man sounding unstable, a woman sounding wronged, private pain, private ruin. All of it true enough to keep deeper eyes away, until it wasn't. Later, when the sealed summaries were written and the archive behind classifications no journalist would ever touch, one paragraph appeared in every single version, almost unchanged. The subject's original claims were not disproven by Scale. They were validated by it. The larger the inquiry became, the more his accounts ceased to resemble accusation and began to resemble early warning. And somewhere beneath the procedural language, beneath the astrology memos, beneath the quantum maps and the confession trees, the case remained what it had always been from the start. A study in what people become when they think nobody can see them. And what happens when, at last, someone can. I'm not going to end today with an invocation. We are going to do a prayer. We're going to pray to God today together. This is the prayer for the Quiet Index. Most High, keeper of what is spoken and what is concealed, stand over the quiet record and hidden ledger where lies were arranged with careful hands. Bring disruption. Where harm was hidden inside polished language, we ask you to bring exposure. Where the innocent were studied, cornered, or measured by malicious eyes, place a wall of fire around their mind, their name, and their dwelling. Firewall. Let the Quiet Index become a book of truth. Let every false pattern unravel into light. Let every covert design turn back upon the architect of deception. Where there was confusion, bring precision. Where there was fear, we're bringing steadiness. Where there was surveillance, bring holy witness, greater than every watcher. Strengthen the one who endured being misread, guard the one who was pressured in silence, preserve the soul that was forced to walk through shadows without becoming shadow. May restraint not be mistaken for weakness, nor patience for surrender, nor quiet for absence. Let what is hidden with evil intent be revealed in its appointed hour. Let every mask crack, let every counterfeit authority fail. Let every room built for manipulation become a chamber of testimony instead. And over it all, place the hand of resurrection over what was buried, over what was silenced, over what was distorted, over what still waits in darkness to be named correctly. May truth rise without panic. May justice move without corruption. May protection remain where envy sought entry. May the record hold. May the innocent stand. May the guilty be known by the weight of their own design. Under Psalms 91, we whisper to you, Lord God Almighty, protect us, vindicate us, and elevate us. Amen. That's all I have today.